As with all communities and niches, there is a series of slang and descriptive words that have little to no meaning to someone who has no experience with them. So it seems like a good starting point for this series to describe some of the words I'll be using and other vocab you might want to know before getting into the hobby of playing games like Dungeons & Dragons. While I can't get every word, here are some basic terms, so let's get started. Welcome to Masters in Dungeoneering. First, and maybe most important, is TTRPG, which is short for Tabletop Roleplaying Game. If nothing else, TTRPGs require people. They're usually separated into two rules. First, there's the GM/DM/narrator. This is the person who facilitates and runs the game, a mix between narrator and referee. There are a lot of names for this: game master, dungeon master, narrator, storyteller, etc. They're all the same thing. The other role is player. This is the person who plays the character in the game. They drive the direction of the story and overcome challenges presented by the GM. Inside the game, there are characters. These are divided between PC or player characters, which are the characters players control over the course of the game. Usually, but not always, one player controls one character. And then there's the NPC or non-player character. They're controlled by the GM. Usually, but not always, the GM controls many NPCs, even simultaneously. Basically, if there's a character that a player isn't controlling, it's an NPC. A group of players is called a party. In writing, the main characters are the protagonists. They're the characters that are the main focus of the story. In TTRPGs, it's usually synonymous with player characters. Being the protagonist doesn't mean you're good. It just means you're the focus of the story. Antagonists are people that oppose the primary characters of the story. Antagonism is different from being bad or evil. The game can have multiple antagonists. BBEG is short for Big Bad Evil Guy/Gal, which is slang for the primary antagonist of a campaign. BBEG does not need to be big, bad, evil, or a guy/gal. Minion, mook, goon are all slang for weak enemies, usually very similar to each other and generally in high numbers. Boss is slang for a strong enemy that is usually unique or more difficult than the minions that it works with/controls. Mini-boss is, somewhere in between, like a lieutenant. Campaign is the overall game you play and the story you experience, comprised of one or more story arcs. An arc is a story comprised of one or more missions and is a smaller subsection of the story within your campaign. An arc usually takes several sessions to complete and is a step in the main story. This is different from a character arc, which is a character's individual story within the campaign. A mission is a goal or series of challenges that usually takes one session to solve, but can last for a handful of sessions. A session is the individual meeting of the players and the GMs when you all get together and play. An encounter is a scene often associated with a challenge. One fight is usually an encounter, as is a puzzle or similar. They're often bookended with brief respites for the characters. A one-shot is a campaign that lasts only one session. It's like a movie compared to a TV show. A two-shot has 2 sessions, three-shot has 3, etc. Backstory is what happens to the characters before the first session. This contains background information and possible non-player characters for the GM to use during the campaign. For the most part, the game is primarily spoken. The exception to this are physical items brought to the table to show you what's in the game world. These are known as props. They could be trinkets, puzzles, maps, figurines, anything, like that. The system/game is the set of rules you use while playing your campaign. Usually, but not always, they include the edition you're playing. So you could say you're playing 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons or Mutants and Masterminds 2E. NE is shorthand for what edition you're playing, where N is the edition number. As it's in 1st edition would be shortened to 1E, 2nd edition would be 2E, 3.5 would be 3.5E. Due to its popularity, if someone just says the edition number, they're usually referring to Dungeons & Dragons. XDN is shorthand for dice, where X is the number of dice being rolled, and N is the number of faces the die has. So 2D10 would be 2 10-sided dice, 5D6 would be 5 6-sided dice, just D4 would be 1 4-sided dice. 1d20 plus 1d4 would be rolling 1 20-sided dice and adding the result of an additional rolled 4-sided dice. In a single dice systems where, for example, you roll a pool of 8-sided dice, it is usually just referred to as D, with the number being how many you're rolling. The character sheet is the form or pieces of paper that the player character information is written on. It usually has stats, scores, modifier, and etc., which are all numerical representations of how good or bad your character is at things, usually added to the result of a dice roll or determining how many dice you roll for a check. Bonuses usually add dice or a flat value, and penalties remove dice or subtract a flat value. The check is any time you roll a dice that you're using to overcome a challenge. So it could be hitting someone with a sword, could be solving a puzzle, it could be trying to read someone's lips. Experience, occasionally shortened to XP, is a way of tracking character progression. In games that use it, tasks such as solving puzzles, talking your way out of problems, completing quests, or killing monsters grants XP. When you have enough, your character progresses to the next level. Not all games use XP. Instead, they use a checkpoint system where instead of increasing your level once you've done enough little tasks, you reach it when you hit a certain point in the game. Level is a way to describe your character's skill and progression. Not all systems use levels, but usually higher level means your character is stronger, smarter, and has more tools and abilities they can use to solve a problem. Health, also known as HP, is an abstract way to denote how much stamina, mental resilience, and overall beefiness to withstand damage your character has. How this abstract is tracked varies a lot from system to system. Equipment, inventory, gear, items, these are all things that your character owns and uses. There can be a differentiation between equipment and inventory, such as what you're wearing and using and what you're carrying separately. When a player talks in-game or in character, they're speaking or acting as their character. This is often used when the players refer to their character in the first person, I/me, instead of third person, he, she, they. Out of game and out of character, on the other hand, is when players are discussing something that their characters aren't. This could be plans or a way for players to interact and be a part of the decision-making process without their characters actually being around. This isn't usually considered metagaming, but it's a way to maintain engagement with all players even if the characters aren't around. For example, someone who's playing a stupid character may have an idea that their character wouldn't, and then they'd want a different character to say it. Or if the players are planning out what they want to do in combat when their characters don't have time to sit down and plan. Some GMs like to limit out-of-character planning to be in-character talking for the sake of keeping the game moving forward. Metagaming is when a player or players use outside knowledge to influence the action of their characters. This is done usually to subvert challenges or mysteries in the game. A TPK, or a wipe, TPK is short for Total Party Kill, is when all the player characters are killed, usually in the same encounter. This is often a result of poor balancing, early levels, bad planning, terrible luck, or some combination of those four. Crunchy and smooth is how specific and detailed a system is. A game where you keep track of your ammunition, how long your rope is, how much your character is carrying, is crunchier than a system where that only comes up when it's narratively dramatic. Fluff is something that only matters in appearance or to the story, but has little to no impact on the game side. Similarly, Reskins is changing the appearance of something to match your character, such as, I'm reskinning my magic to be entirely thrown or applied potions because it fits better with my alchemist character. Instead of changing weapons every time I find something better, I want to say it's the same ancestral magic weapon that gets stronger the more I use it. Reskin and Fluff are very similar in that they both really enhance the narrative while not affecting the game or using resources. RAW and RAI, or Raw and Rye. Raw is short for rules as written. often when used in discussions about how an ability works based solely on how it's written in the rulebook. Rye, on the other hand, is rules as intended, how an ability is supposed to work based on what the author or game designer had in mind. Usually, Raw is more exploitable because rules as written can't account for everyone's imagination. Homebrew is when a GM comes up with new rules or fixes to rules that they don't like in order to change the way the game is played, hopefully in order to make it more fun and interesting for the players. This is also known as house rules. Each GM and even each group has their own set of homebrewed rules. Okay, that was a lot, but like I said, there's so many things I couldn't get into on just one video, so I'll sprinkle them into the rest of my videos. But this should at least give you something to start with as we talk about TTRPGs in the future. If you happen to have a lot of experience in this already, please add words I may have missed in the comments section below.